Welcome. Hello. It is News from the Pew. I am your host, Rick Barrett, and we are here to take news from around the interwebs and distill it to places that are slightly less frightening. And I am joined, as always, by my panel, Mr. Fawaz Yazi, coming to us from Kentucky. Also, the host of the Get to Know You, has a couple hip hop albums out. I mean, if you've heard of them. You also have him performing at Catholic Palooza coming up in a couple weeks, right? That's not very far away. So go to, I think is it CatholicPalooza.com or
I think so. Yeah, just go on Catholic Palooza on Instagram.
Yeah,
it's July 15th.
There you go, July 15th. That's definitely the time to do it. So don't miss out if you're in the North Carolina area. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Great artists. Hallowed's going to be there, Enoch, and a bunch of others. And I wish I could.
I'm in North Carolina area. I didn't know about this.
It's actually in Virginia, it's not pretty close, right? To North Carolina?
It's in Virginia.
Yeah.
If it's in that mid-Atlantic area,
the Martyrs Walks are going to have a vendor table over there.
Yeah. We're very thank you for helping us out with that.
Absolutely.
That's great to get the word out for them and so forth. And
Absolutely.
Yes, we will be having. If you do go in Virginia, where it's located, then check out the Martyrs Walk table. We're gonna have a bunch of guys there hanging out, and it'll be a lot of fun. So there's that. And then, of course, we have the godfather of Catholic YouTube and all media, Steve Cunningham, hanging out with us as always. And I just keep pressing buttons. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Excuse me. Let's get to our first story. Let's talk about some politics at first. I know politics is awful, but unfortunately, it is the system of government which we are under. So we might as well talk about it. And the big one is the fact that rules are for thee, not for me. And it comes to Hunter Biden. Baby boy Biden, who has a litany of things that he could be thrown in jail for many different reasons. But amazingly enough, on the same day they filed the federal charges, they came up with a plea deal on the same day. It's the craziest thing in the world. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I know Steve's got a video or two to catch you up.
Ask you this. You said in your response to Senator Cruz that you and the FBI do your job to the best of your ability. So why don't you tell me what your job is? Is it to defend and shield Joe Biden, or is your job to protect this country and the Constitution of the United States? Which is it?
The job of the FBI is to protect the country, keep people safe, and uphold the Constitution of our great country.
So
period. That's what we work to do every day, objectively. There are not two standards of justice. There is only one. It's applied equally to each and every person.
Perception, there are two standards, very clear standards of justice in this country. We see it every single day. The American people see this every single day. They look at you and they see a politicized entity that is weaponizing an agency of the federal government against the American people.
That is not the FBI that I see, Senator.
That is not the FBI you see. There are a lot of good people that work for the FBI, but you have a political cabal there. So why did you decide to conceal the information in that revelation to the House Oversight Committee? Why did you redact all of that pertaining to the phone calls?
We have exceptional people within the
You're not
FBI,
answering the question.
Best.
Why did you redact that information?
And they work relentlessly every day to keep this country safe and to protect people.
You chose not to reveal that the calls were there, and Senator Grassley found it out anyway. Is that accurate?
With regard to the document,
you chose to redact it, yes or no?
We often redact documents to protect
so
sources
you chose
and
to
methods.
redact the fact that there are 17 voice recordings, 2 of those with the now president. You chose to redact that and not to give that to House Oversight.
I have no idea if there are voice recordings or not. What I will tell you with respect to the document, the document was redacted to protect the source, as everyone knows.
Well, then,
and this is a question of life
my
and death,
time has
potentially.
expired, but I think it would be helpful if when you came before us, if you were willing to answer the questions, it would help to remove the perception that the American people have because this is what they see. They see you do it every day, and that is politicizing the FBI and using it against the American people who don't happen to be named Biden, Clinton, or one of the other.
Home in Texas, I hear from Texans who are deeply dismayed about the growing politicization and weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI. If you are not, every one of you should be deeply concerned about the damage being done to the integrity of the institutions in which you operate. My office hears regularly from FBI agents and from assistant U.S. attorneys who are likewise concerned about the politicization and weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI, and this is profoundly damaging to the rule of law in our nation. Last month, a whistleblower brought to light the existence in the FBI of a report, an FD 1023, in which the informant alleges that President Biden and his family members engaged in a $5 million bribery scheme during his time as vice president. Deputy Director Abate, is it true that the FBI has a report making those allegations?
I'm not going to comment on that, Senator.
And why is that?
I'm just not going to comment on information we received, investigations, or
Do you owe an
ongoing matters.
obligation to the American people to be candid about evidence of corruption by the President of the United States?
This is an area that I'm not going to get into with you, Senator.
Well, I understand you don't want to, and that's why people are mad at the FBI, because you're stonewalling and covering up serious allegations of evidence of corruption from the president. Yesterday, Senator Chuck Grassley stood on the Senate floor and alleged that there are 17 recordings of this informant from Burisma, Ukrainian natural gas company. 15 of them are recordings, voice recordings of him talking to Hunter Biden. 2 of them are voice recordings of him talking to Joe Biden. Deputy Director Abate, does the FBI have 17 voice recordings laying out evidence of a bribery scheme?
Senator, I would add also that we've worked with the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah, this is the Senate. We're the other side of the Capitol. This is the Senate. Do you have those 17 recordings?
I'm not going to comment on any investigative matters, Senator.
See, that's the problem. The FBI, and I've had this conversation with Chris Wray too, this is why you are damaging the institution. The American people have a right to know whether there is serious, credible evidence that the President of the United States took a $5 million bribe. And by the way, if it's false, Chairman Durbin just rolled his eyes. If Chairman Durbin were interested in the rule of law, we would have a hearing on these allegations. But of course, the Democrats don't want a hearing on these allegations. And to be clear, if the allegations are false, you know who could disprove them? Joe Biden. He could call for this to be released publicly. But the FBI is stonewalling. Would you agree?
Two things, Senator. No
Sure.
one's stonewalling. The 1023
You just said you refused to answer the
was provided
question.
in response to a subpoena.
Okay,
to the
then why'd
House
you refuse
Oversight
to answer my
Committee.
question?
The pertinent information is there, and I reject your assertion that the
Why
FBI
did you
is
refuse to answer my
politicized.
question?
I just answered your question.
Okay, so yes, you have a 1023. Do you have the 17 recordings? Yes or no?
I'm not going to get further into that.
So you're stonewalling. You can't say I'm not refusing to answer your question, but I won't answer your question.
I'm going to answer within the parameters that we operate in.
That's the problem. The FBI has right now an unlimited hubris that you believe you are unaccountable. You don't believe you're accountable to the United States Congress, and you don't believe you're accountable to the American people. And you are doing damage. The FBI is a great institution. When I go home to Texas, people ask me, should we abolish the FBI? Now, I tell them no, because you have heroes and patriots working for you that are catching child predators, that are catching terrorists. But you're sitting there happily erecting a wall to protect Joe Biden. Will you provide to this committee, not the House, the Senate Judiciary Committee, will you provide the FD 1023 and will you provide the 17 recordings so we can assess what is the evidence, the specific credible evidence that Joe Biden personally took a $5 million bribe from a foreign national?
Read your order of the code red.
Senator, we will work with this committee, you and other members, to provide the information within the parameters of the process.
Will you provide the FD 1023? Yes or no?
I will take that back and we will work with our
So
team.
you're not answering that. Will
I
you
sit
provide
on
the
a wall.
17 recordings?
We will take that back and we'll work with you.
I have two
So
books.
you're not
on
answering
my
that either.
bedside every
Did
night.
you investigate in any way, shape, or form these allegations?
Senator, once again, I'm not going to comment.
So you're
I
not going to
did
say
not.
whether you did your job?
We do our job to the very best of our ability.
Well, not here. You're not
Here's a
answering a
speech impediment.
single question to the American people. And you may think this is esoteric. I promise you, millions of Americans are concerned. You know who isn't concerned? Not a single Senate Democrat. We're going to go through this whole hearing. Not one Democrat will ask a question about this. You know who else isn't concerned? The corporate media, who is joining with the Democrats in covering up this evidence. If Joe Biden is innocent, the evidence should be made public and demonstrate that he's innocent. But if he is not, is it true this informant who alleged that he personally took a bribe was an informant the FBI had relied upon previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
In each and every investigation that we have, all the work that we do,
I asked you
the
a yes or no
expectation
question.
is that every logical avenue of investigation be pursued
I asked you a
to
yes
its
or no
fullest.
question. Are you going to answer it?
Yeah, I'm answering your question.
Was the informant one you had relied on previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
Senator, we run down every piece of information, every
You're not
lead,
answering it then. You're refusing to answer
objectively,
it. So you're refusing to answer the
to
question.
the fullest extent possible.
You're refusing to answer the question. Is
relentlessly,
that correct?
aggressively,
Yeah,
in
I think
all
we got
instances.
the point.
79,
Yep, I think
Chuck
we got
Berry was found guilty of tax invasion. Chuck Berry went to federal prison. Tax evasion. Last week, we heard that Joe Biden's son reached a plea deal for exactly the same crime that put Chuck Berry behind bars. Joe Biden is only looking at a couple of misdemeanors. No jail time is expected. You're behind enemy lines. Tax crimes used to be one of the biggest offenses for proponents of big government. Not even the famous were let off the hook. Wesley Snipes served 3 years in prison for tax evasion. The baseball player, Darryl Strawberry, served 3 months. The musician, Lauryn Hill, 3 months. Pete Rose, 5 months. They even threw Martha Stewart in jail. That's not the country I live in. But like you, we may live in an area of the country that is celebrating Hunter Biden's get out of jail free card. They're celebrating the corrupt protection of a family deemed too big to fail. If this is where you find yourself today, you are behind enemy lines. Hunter Biden was also given a sweetheart diversion deal for lying about his drug use when he purchased a firearm. This despite photos of Hunter brandishing his firearm while high on drugs.
He didn't
Let me
inhale.
say that again. This despite the photos of Hunter Biden brandishing a firearm while high on drugs.
And then he dumped it into a dumpster.
I want you to do something right now. If you're by your computer, and you have your phone, just Google the words "man arrested for brandishing a gun" on social media. Just scroll through these stories where multiple people were arrested and jailed for doing it. Do you think any of them were considered for a diversion? No. Not in the other America. They didn't carry the name of a politician for the regime.
Yeah. So hey, and then Jonathan Aaron is with us. What's up, buddy? How you doing, my friend?
Good to be here.
Always, we love having you. So it's pretty much an exercise. Now that you're here, Jonathan, I'm gonna toss it to you first. And the elitist system, the class system, the fact that doesn't matter what these people do, the federal government will always find a way to protect its own.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there's no surprise there. So anyone that's really surprised, I think should have their head examined. But I mean, the main thing is just we've been prepped for this for a while. So there shouldn't be any surprise. There's always got to be some sort of like a sacrificial goat of sorts. So, and this one is actually a pretty fitting goat, as it were. So, I don't know. I guess the commentators, like we just heard, have to make a living, and so they've got to they have to pretend to be somewhat surprised by this. And I mean, yeah, there is a sense in which it's all just scandalous that no one in the government seems to be going after the common good. But I mean, again, there's little, I think, to be surprised about in regard to the way they're behaving right now. So both in lack of punishment and the so-called punishment, putative punishment. So until there's sanity elsewhere in the government, I don't know why we'd look for it in this instance. I guess is the best way I could put it.
Excellent. Fawaz, the lack of virtue you have in all of these things, from Hunter Biden taking advantage of the spoils of his position under his father by living a life of indulgence, whether it is drugs or the company of women or whatever the case may be, to the expectation by the Bidens that this will be covered up, to the FBI itself, where they are in dereliction of their duty. Of course, we all know Hoover created the FBI, and the FBI has been crooked since it was invented. It's been used against the American people since its inception. But the idea that they shield themselves in this virtue and of protecting the Constitution and law and all this other stuff. And my final thing before I throw it to you, I'm so tired of this. Well, we have so many good people working there. It doesn't mean squat because these things are still taking place.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jonathan and Rick. You guys brought up good points. I mean, ever since Calvin Coolidge, I believe, is the one who appointed Hoover to the FBI. I think was it back in the 1930s, 40s, and it's any organization that starts that has good intentions or good motives, and when you throw money and power to it, obviously, when you're dealing with fallen men. Which we've been dealing with since the fall. Things are going to get tainted because people like power, people like money, and people like corruption. And not only that, but folks who are addicted to power, when they lust after power, love to see other people be humiliated. They love to overpower other folks and crush them. And this is what we're seeing. And like you said, there's no virtue in men. And we're talking about back in the 30s and 40s, men had more virtue than they have today. Imagine today. And you're right. When you're dealing with this whole understanding of there's so many good people, just a few bad eggs. Well, none of us would eat a whole piece of cake when one slice of it has poison. We just wouldn't do it. We wouldn't take that chance. So why would you congratulate all the good men and women working in the FBI, when you have all of the bad, even if it's a minority, we all know what the minority can do. We have a minority, 1% of the country that identify a certain way, and they're the ones who actually are running the show. So I don't care about the good, in an organization that is corrupt and powerful. So that's the major issue. One thing that I'm really disappointed about is this whole Senate hearing, and I can't stand these Senate hearings because they do absolutely nothing. I've said this before. They're literally, Ted Cruz will come over there just to try to get reelected, and he'll fundraise after, trying to make a bunch of money for his reelection campaign, and to do what? They purposefully hire people that have no conscience. Because you can't when you're working for the FBI or the CIA or these three-letter organizations. You can't have a conscience. So scolding them and saying you've let down the American people. These guys don't care about the American. They don't care about they're powerful. They have friends that they've been bought and paid for. They have an agenda they have to go through. They don't care. Another thing, this whole idea of the Constitution. The Constitution means literally squat if you have all of these people in power that can just go around it, and there's no accountability because they're the ones who actually, get to, what's the word I'm looking for? They do something wrong, they investigate themselves, and they do nothing wrong. And that's what the conclusion they come up with. We have a 2-tier system. We have a 3-tier system. And it's this whole thing idea about Trump being, they're going after Trump, No. Trump has the power. He has the money to fight this. He's going to be fine. Who doesn't is your average person who's trying to live a decent life, and now they're coming after him because he's standing outside of an abortion clinic praying the rosary. Yeah. That's the person that you worry about. There were 217,000 cases, I believe, in the last 3 years with the FBI. 217,000 cases that they had to apologize for. But they don't care. They're going to continue to do it. They're going to put out a blanket statement and say, we're going to do better next time. There's no accountability. It's like talking to a child. If there's no punishment, why would he stop doing what he's doing? And my last point is this. Just like with the whole liturgy, a lot of people, and rightfully so, they'll bring up Sacrosanctum Concilium when it comes to the clown masses. Well, you could sit there and point at the document all you want. What good is the document if it's not being implemented in reality? If we're seeing all of these masses and all of these things, it's like me saying, it's like someone saying, "Hey, how's your marriage? Your marriage is horrible. You're cheating on your wife. You don't come home. You're a drunk. You're an abuser." And then I get the answer, "Yeah, well, but the document says it's a valid marriage." It doesn't matter if there's no parameters protecting the document in reality. And the same thing with the Constitution. What's the point? You keep bringing back the Constitution, and they keep tiptoeing around the Constitution and getting away with it. There's no accountability. And because there's no accountability, they're going to continue doing it. And my final thing is, it's okay to get angry at this kind of stuff, because if you have any sort of virtue, there's justice and there's righteous anger in this. And you want to see a country for the sake of your children, and you're doing all you can to, but the hypocrisy sometimes drive you insane, because the same Democrats who say they want tighter gun restrictions are the same ones that are saying that, what's his name? Hunter Biden, should get away with what he did. According to them, he should be in jail according to their gun laws. So they can't have it both ways. It's a system of hypocrisy. The Democrats, the Republicans, all the conservatives, anybody in politics, they're all hypocrites. All they care about is the agenda and themselves, not the American people. And so there needs to be, like Steve always says, there needs to be less callous on your fingers, because typing on Twitter and complaining about this all, and more callous on your knees, because you're kneeling and you're saying the rosary that God can remove these people and put good ones in charge.
Well said. Well said. And I think we'll just jump right to Steve. What do you got there, bud? What are you reading there, buddy?
Rethinking the American Union for the 21st Century.
Great book.
Donald Livingston. Get it? You'll like it. You'll see why I keep talking about that a lot. Anything the Fed's pretty much. How about this? By a round of applause, or can someone tell me anything that the federal government has done good in the last
ever?
Yeah, since its existence, it's hard pressed to find that. I don't know. I'm definitely not in the last decade. I'm trying to figure something out, but let's see. The deficit. The deficit. 31 trillion. The Heritage Foundation came out with a report to think on freedom, where the U.S. is like 27th, I think. It's behind Austria and Saudi, UAB. We're not down there where with the Venezuela and Cuba yet, but I give it a couple more years, we'll get there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the whole idea. We sing it's kind of like what Fawaz was talking about. We say the stuff like we sing the songs, "Land of the Free, Home of the Brave." Define what free is. That whole terrorists hate us because our freedom. What freedom? I mean, tell me what this freedom thing is. Is it just to be able to speak your mind online? It's kind of license, not freedom. What are you free to do? I mean, if we were free to do things, we wouldn't have a tax code the size of this room where everyone pretty much screws up, and we do the whole joke. We're doing something illegal every moment of the day because the laws are so enormous that no one even knows what the laws are. You're breaking a law somewhere. We just don't know it. It's pretty bad when the Congress or the Senate makes you look that bad. Marcia tore him apart. And good old Canadian Ted Cruz, the Mountie, came charging in and just ripped them apart. I mean, that was embarrassing. I mean, that should never happen to a group, the Congress, which, if you're looking at the three branches of government, has pretty much ceded their power to the judicial and executive without not even a whimper. It's like, here, take it. We're here. We'll be over here in the corner just making some videos and talking, and we'll get a paycheck, but we really do nothing. As they said, as Fawaz and Jonathan said, it's basically like a little, your little show, which you guys really do it. And it is. It's just show business for ugly people, WWF style. We're Pepsi's mad at Coke this week. Tune in at 7 for the heavy cage match. We'll have Cruz against the FBI guy. And you'll see something will happen. You just wait and see. Nothing will happen, obviously, because, I mean, like you said, how many celebrities have been charged up and nothing, and they go to jail, and Biden's not. And that's just a little one. They got rid of the big one. I mean, how many audio? They said 17 audio. Them talking to Ukrainian guys, giving them, was it $5 billion, what it was? And slap on the wrist, no big deal. But then look at all the corruption we've had at the DC level. As Rick said, since the beginning, if I had a little poof, and it's a roll out, you'd have on small print times font 8, and you could fill up a couple books of pages like this. It's to anybody, and then to think that it's so, well, if you just vote this guy in on DC, that'll do it. Yeah, pass the hookah, pass whatever Hunter has, because that will help you out and pretty much will make an argument better. That's the only way you could show it. Now, I say that, and I watched was it Vivek the other day on Whitlock's? I know Jordan Peterson did a thing with him. Now that guy, I'll give it. I'm not doing the hopium thing. That guy is a smart dude. The dude's funding it with his own money. He's very intelligent, can articulate anything. The Hinduism thing is weird on me. I mean, you put a gun in my head, I can only give you a little bit on Hinduism. But, I mean, he's saying what everyone else is saying, and he's going after the Fed. The man will be dead if he ever got elected. He'll be dead in a week. He's talking about getting rid of the Fed 90%, I think it was. Now, you want somebody to talk election, you want somebody that's talking pro-life, pro-family, if you can't articulate that part right, you're not going to get, you might get your fan club a vote. You're not going to go remotely far because they'll make you look stupid on TV. One of the things that I saw recently was, did we talk about this last week? The court in Arkansas?
Arkansas's ban on gender-affirming care for minors.
The judge says that the nation's first ban on such care for transgender children violates the U.S. Constitution. The law prohibited doctors from providing gender-affirming hormone treatment, puberty blockers, or surgery to anyone under 18. I
bring that up just because you heard him say the key word. Oh, violate the Constitution. It violated the First Amendment. I heard that, and you know me, my head was about to blow up. The first, Congress shall not pass, talking about speech, religion. We're to talk about cutting your, what? How did Congress shall not pass get into Arkansas shall not pass anything on transgender surgeries? You talk about just a wackadoodle world. And by the way, that federal judge is an Obama appointee. And I was given praise on the clown planet about the Confederate Constitution, which everyone just went, oh, he just said it. No, what it did? It took the errors of the Constitution we have now and corrected a lot of that, like terms in presidency, like terms in Congress, presidential years, terms in Congress, and no federal judges. That was a federal judge that struck down Arkansas. There are federal judges all over the place trying to strike down state rights, state rules, right, constitutions right this minute. And Biden did what? He has appointed more federal judges than Trump did, I think twice as much. Sure, Trump got the 3 in SCOTUS, but Biden has taken a ton of the federal courts and put it under his wing, which is all political stuff now. So that would eliminate that. Not that we can't go back and do that or now, but yeah, Arkansas can't do what it wants because the Fed got in and made up some cockamamie thing that it's violated the Constitution somehow. So they have to, I think it's irrevocable now that they cannot change it from here to kingdom come while they're in the union. Now, again, because Fawaz brought up the Constitution part of it, they do not care. was 15 years ago. Just to piggyback on what Fawaz said, James Clyburn was interviewed, and he goes, I think it was with the judge from Napolitano. He said, Judge, most of what we do in D.C. goes against the Constitution. And yet we think that we vote these angels from heaven into D.C. and things are good. The FBI is corrupt, CIA is corrupt, all these guys are corrupt, and then you see what's going on here. And Trump, the Trumpzilla thing, vote him in if you want. Call me up when everything else changes. Like I said, send some of what Hunter's got going, so you could probably get a good deal out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The whole thing is just an exercise in why the founders, whoever you want to say, learned men, did not want a system like this in place. There's nothing in the Constitution that's supposed to have this Leviathan, I guess is the best way to say it, of government agencies, whether it's FBI, ATF, the Department of Education, the Bureau of Land Management, all of these, layer after layer after layer, people who haven't done a stinking thing in their life except sit behind a computer and regulate your life, and you pay their pension, you pay their money. I mean, it's theft, it's thievery. Joe
Biden, for example,
word for it, where it's usury. It's usury at the highest form, the federal government, if you really want to look at it that way.
I mean, Biden's been in 5 decades in politics. He's never ran a business in his life, and
also just realize that the charges for Hunter were filed in Delaware. His crimes happened in D.C., and D.C. has its own jurisdiction. Yet this stuff was filed in Delaware, where he happened to be a senator for a gazillion years. And, it's not like that makes any sense, but sure, that's fine.
Maybe we'll get Fetterman to come in and just be his attorney.
Oh, that would just be the greatest thing ever. If you can get Lurch to do that, because the guy can't even, y'all saw him try to introduce Joe Biden when he came to do the bridges, and bridges, Joe, all of them, great. I mean, he literally has just gone to every other word at this point. It's fantastic in that regard. I love it in that. But we're looking at this federal government that's out of control.
Well, here's a great example.
Yeah.
Following up from some announcements earlier this year, during the department's regular oversight of our execution of presidential drawdown authority for Ukraine, we discovered inconsistencies in equipment valuation for Ukraine. In a significant number of cases, services used replacement costs rather than net book value, thereby overestimating the value of the equipment drawn down from U.S. stocks and provided to Ukraine. Once we discovered this misvaluation, the comptroller reissued guidance on March 31st, clarifying how to value equipment in line with the financial management regulation and DoD policy to ensure we use the most accurate of accounting methods. We have confirmed that for FY23, the final calculation is $3.6 billion, and for FY22, it is $2.6 billion, for a combined total of $6.2 billion. These valuation errors in no way limit or restricted the size of any of our PDAs or impacted the provision of support to Ukraine. And while the DoD retains the authority to utilize the recaptured PDA, this has no bearing on appropriated USAI or Ukraine PDA replenishment.
But it was like Office Space in real life.
It's just one decimal point. That's all. It's not a big deal. It's only supposed to pull it out a little bit at a time. But I mean, John, I want to throw this to you, man. They're just like, by the way, that's like an extra $6 billion to the Ukraine. Just that's all. And people, I'm not in favor of it, but if there's going to be like $6 billion lying around, help a brother out. Maybe I can get some eggs or some bread or something like that. Instead, it's getting filed straight to Zelensky Corp.
Well, I'm glad we saw that. I mean, as ridiculous and just out of this world as it is, it's a good reminder. They let certain things like this drop every so often to just show us with what sort of impunity they can do whatever in the world they want. Because if any of us were to ever do that in the private sphere, where we are, in whatever our line of work is, I don't care, you name it, we would never, and rightfully so, never work. I mean, basically, unless we were master fakers and could just, basically start a new life somewhere, which there are people that, are good at that, I guess. If you want to live, running from the law the rest of your life, you can maybe make that work. But I mean, as a legitimate person in the public sphere whose name could be easily Googled, you never work again. And yet these folks, they retain that. What did she say? They retain, whatever, the right to do this, that, and the other. But what I was thinking as we were hearing that just madness is that, boy, we should thank God that we are not in their shoes. Because, I mean, just imagine what a disaster that is for your entire life to think that you can continue to act with impunity. That is to act without being punished justly for what you've just done. We should really thank God that we are not in that position, because that is not the way the world works. Right now, they're able to cheat the system. And yes, folks in power have been able to do that at various times. But, if you look back at the history of mankind, what happens is the folks that live like that, they are on such a thin rope. They're walking such a thin rope like that. And, when they fall off, it's disaster. And so they're living. It's hard for us to believe it sometimes because they seem to just enjoy the high life and have all the everything accompanies them as they go, all the bells and whistles. But if they ever fall, then it's game over. And it's usually a pretty humiliating fall, and it's and like back in Roman antiquity, it usually meant your life and all your family, your extended family's lives as well. So, as humiliating to our country as something like that is, and as frustrating as it can be, still, just as a brief reminder, we should thank God that it's not us.
Absolutely, in that regard. I mean, flaws, it's definitely just money lying around, and, nobody's using it, so we might as well, right?
Yeah. They're like Jonathan said, you're either a crook or you're incompetent. There's no either way. They'd rather have the incompetence because they can just get away with it and just say, well, we just messed up, but we'll do better next time. That's what they always say. Who was it? Yep. Was it, I think it was Nikita Shrashevek, who said that we're going to continue feeding you slow doses of communism. See, this is how they change the country. They can't go full force because you recognize it and then you fight, and then you end up, pushing back. But they give you small doses of this stuff, and they end up arming every corner of the country, every corner of the world with small doses of communism. You're going to wake up one day and realize this ain't the country I used to know, or my parents used to know, or my ancestors used to know. And all of a sudden, nothing you could do about it because it was a slow takeover, and it went past your head because we were watching football, sending our kids to public school, and eating Cheetos. There's really nobody to blame, and the bishops are just sitting around and playing footsie with the politicians, some literally, and it's just getting to a point where there's no leadership. Like there's no opposition at this point. There is no opposition. You've got Kabuki Theater. Heaven literally is the only solution to this, and a lot of times either God directly sends someone or a group of people to start a grassroots and to start from the very beginning and to bring it back up, or destroys everything and then starts over again. We've seen that time and time. So there's not much for me to say other than the fact that they found some money that they didn't know they had. So they were incompetent about it. They sent it to the Ukraine because they're fighting a proxy war against Russia. They're depleting Russia's resources by using Ukraine. And it's just, and then the money gets turned back around and goes God knows where. Like what happened to that guy with Sandman. You saw what happened with Sandman, the guy who committed some crypto fraud that donated hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of that crypto fraud to the Democratic politicians. And then all of a sudden, just very quietly in the middle of the night, like November of 2020, all his charges have been dropped, even though he perpetrated a fraud against the American people and handed that money to the Democrats. But because he's got friends in higher places, this is what happens. We're dealing with evil, sick folks who are too, like Jonathan said, when you're dealing with that much power and impunity, I don't want to be in their position, because Judgment Day is not going to be fun for them. It ain't going to be fun for me either, but I can guarantee you it ain't going to be fun for them.
Blaming all my roots. I sure like them boots. For a while, I said friends in low places.
I mean, there's a whole other thing with him, but we can talk about that maybe later. But
old Garth.
Old Garthy Garth. But yeah, that's just, but don't worry, folks. We have, I guess we'll say breaking news here on News from the Pew. And if you want, is it Chip Roy? You got the information from Chip Roy, Steve? Just play the clip.
Of affairs in our country. And this is the consequence to those migrants who are seeking to come here, where my colleagues in the false name of compassion state that open borders is somehow good for them. But this is causing crime to extend into our communities. This is causing us to experience the dangerous hand of cartels. Just this morning, we had more news about cartels and their reach into Texas, into the United States. It is an everyday occurrence. Bailouts, damage to ranches, harm to Texans, death to Texans, fentanyl. How many more fentanyl mobs? How many more angel mobs? How many more Americans need suffer because this president refuses to follow the laws of the United States that he raised his hand and swore an oath to defend? And that is why we're here, and that is why I support the resolution, and I reserve.
Yeah, look at that, folks. The House has voted to impeach Joey B from the office. That's back-to-back impeachments, ladies and gentlemen.
More theater.
There you go. Back-to-back impeachments. So, of course, we know it's not going to go anywhere or do anything, but hey, they'll all fundraise like the Dickens off of it, and make sure that as we go into 2024, it's another thing that we can all hope and pray and to your secular gods that we can fix by getting either Trump or DeSantis or, I don't know, Mike Pence or whoever else you want to put in there. Because it really doesn't matter. The only thing with Trump is you get some funny sound bites. Maybe one or two things happen. But you
might have a president in jail too, so that's kind of cool. It goes with the party atmosphere.
That would be fantastic if he's running it from there. I mean, that would just be like day to day. They wouldn't even be able to give him a pen because he'd like shank somebody.
Well, just like you were joking last week, I own this prison. It's the greatest prison in the world. Yes.
It's okay because it's the greatest prison they've ever seen.
What's fun with Trump is the blue-haired people get to scream at the sky for 4 more years. So that's entertaining to me. So that's great.
If the ship's going down, we might as well be entertained and have the blue-haired leftists lose their minds as the ship goes down by the front.
And by the way, just to let you guys know, not you guys, but the guys watching, what they're impeaching him is not anything to do with the Hunter Biden thing. It's about the immigration thing. So there's no treason involved. There's no. And by the way, if you did get him out of D.C., congratulations, you got Kamala.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's pretty much leaving like the family pet to watch your house. Nothing's gonna happen. No. So it's really not that big of a deal. But yeah,
great. It's great TV.
Could you imagine that? Putin's like, please impeach Joe Biden. I'd love to see Kamala Harris come over here and try to negotiate because she can't speak now. Imagine her trying to speak in front of Putin. But that's okay because they're all worthless. So I think, Steve, do we have anything else? I know we talked about Hunter and a couple other things. Do we have anything else in the political realm we have to cover?
Wow, thanks.
All right, so let's move on to pretty much everything else, pop culture, things that are going on, current events. And yeah, some of you guys already talked about it. I do want to touch on this real quick because it did happen and it is in the zeitgeist. This unfortunate tragedy with I believe it was the Ocean Gate, the submarine that went down to the Titanic, and we found out today that this thing just like imploded. And so all 5 people that were in the submarine, you can take comfort in knowing that they didn't feel a thing because at 6,000 pounds per square inch, it didn't take more than a millisecond for this whole thing to just end. But I want to ask each of you for your opinion on the obsession with, the idea of the Titanic or tragedy as a tourist destination, as something almost, and I'll throw this out there too. You had the Titanic people paying money to go down to the sea. And now you have, if you've seen it recently, the rotating line at Mount Everest, where people pay money to stand in line. And if you've seen them lately, it is just a line from the top of it all the way down, which is, if you don't know about Everest, the point, the top point where you don't have any air. It's actually, you're not supposed to be standing around for hours waiting to take a photo at the top of Everest and then walk back down. But we have this desire, especially in Western civilization, to do these silly things as almost like check marks for our lives because of some hole we need to fill. Your thoughts on the entire idea of going to paying money to go down to the bottom of the seafloor, or going up to the top of Everest, or just these check marks people have to do, John? Just I mean, we're not looking for anything too deep here because it's kind of like just a very zeitgeist thing, but just your opinions on these, starting with John.
We don't have, the Compostela pilgrimage anymore. We don't have, tons of people besides tradies doing short pilgrimage. We don't have, you don't have Belloc taking off to Rome on foot anymore. Without something like that, I mean, if I weren't a Catholic, I'd be wanting to do something like that, to be honest with you. I like cliff diving, stuff like that. So, I think I'd probably do more of it if the faiths weren't a foundation, a bedrock like that for me, and if I didn't have a pilgrimage to look forward to. So I get it as part of this goofy modern response to a deep-seated psychological need we have to basically to kind of like what Aristotle says in book 3 of his Ethics, like a man who knows that he needs to show virtue somehow to gain what Aristotle calls glory, basically just means for people to kind of give you like, hey, bravo, good job. He needs to show bravery somehow, right? And so it has to be something out of the ordinary of ordinary events in life. And so, I say it makes a lot of sense actually with the true psychology of man, the way our souls are made up. It makes sense to me that folks would feel the need to do something like that. And even to kind of go, just like with a lot of the pilgrimages that we have in Catholicism, to go and be where some great tragedy happened. I mean, think about the way we do that in the Holy Land. So it's ridiculous, it's perverse, it's goofy the way it's done in modern life, but it's a testament again to just a deep-seated part of man's nature.
Yeah, that's a very eloquent way to put it. Fwaz, your thoughts?
Just echoing to what Jonathan brilliantly displayed here. Number one, I think there's a certain desire and hunger that man possesses, and sometimes it's fueled by curiosity. But like anything else, when it's pointed towards the right direction, it can lead a man to holiness. If it's put into prayer and all these things, but it can also lead man to destruction. And we see this with the new wave of I guess Generation Z, whatever they want to call themselves, or the new generation with the TikTok. I'll call it the TikTok generation. There's this hunger to be to do great things, to be remembered as someone great. And I think that's part of the reasons why we admire the saints so much. They did something extraordinary, or this heroic virtue there that we look at and say, that's what I want. Like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And then we look at that person and say, wow, look at that, the sacrificial love that they had for their neighbor or for God. And we want that. We hunger for it. And God put that hunger in us so that we can continue to grow in holiness and to hunger for him greater and greater. But with everything, prudence is going to be the key. Because if you're looking at the TikTok generation, where's that hunger going? The concupiscible appetite is never going to be satisfied, except for by God. That's why it's put there, so we can continue to hunger for God. even our hunger for food is a lesser degree our hunger for God. So if you look at the concupiscible appetite, which leads to a lot of times lust and leads to gluttony, which is the same appetite, the issue that we have here is the more that you do, at some point, the mundaneness is going to get to you. So you want to do something greater, want to do something more. This is why we're seeing this Missy guy going into people's houses, because his audience are no longer looking for his, the same antics anymore. Now we want something more dangerous, something more thrilling, something more greater. And he's going to people's homes, not telling them, and he's doing all of these pranks that we're seeing on TikTok. And these things are dangerous to society because we're feeding the wrong hunger. Where that hunger is there for God, but we're feeding it to pretty much satisfy ourselves and others. So when you in all prayers to the people who went down there, and there's this sense of curiosity, who trying to go find the Titanic. They paid, I think, $100 to $200,000 each. Prayers to them and their family. I hope their souls were in the right state. That they can enjoy God and beat the vision. If they spend some time in purgatory, we can pray for them, and of course we pray for them also and their families. But at the same time, two things can be true. That this event did happen and it was organic, but the media is also going to take this event and you're going to say, "Hey guys, here's a big event. Let's blast it all over the place so they can forget about what's going on in politics, what's going on with Joe Biden, the impeachment, and all the stuff." It becomes another red flag for them to distract us. Because it seems to me every single time something big happens with politics and with the administration and what the U.S. wants to do, either there's a balloon flying up in Montana or there's a submarine going down to the Titanic. And it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, you have a clip from the great Paul Joseph Watson.
Tragedy or a potential miracle. The company's drive for diversity may have jeopardized the safety of the vessel. OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush didn't want to continue hiring a bunch of 50-year-old white guys because this wouldn't be inspirational.
You'll see a whole bunch of 50-year-old white guys. I wanted our team to be younger, to be inspirational.
Some of these hirings related directly to safety and risk assessment. One of those 50-year-old white guys, David Lockridge, was fired in 2018 for blowing the whistle on safety issues. So which inspirational candidates got hired instead of those 50-year-old white guys? Well, at least one of them is a young female TikToker who shared the final video of the vessel's descent.
Yeah, well, what a shock. You brought a woman into it and things went downhill right after that. But that's just me. Steve?
Just what you guys were talking about with the locations. I remember one of my Uber drives, I picked up a lady and she made me never ask the following question ever again. Did you get to see everything you wanted to see? Because I was taking her back to the airport. She was out of town. And she responded with, I didn't get to see Columbine. And I was like, "The what?" And you didn't get to see Columbine. So literally, I told, "Well, we got time. I guess I could take you there." I mean, at the time, didn't live too far away, and she wanted to go. She basically begged me to take her to Columbine from Jonathan. You remember? Was it the connector? I was over there. It was over there by
C-470.
I was almost over there with northeast Denver. Close. I was 15 minutes from the airport to drive all the way to Columbine.
Oh boy!
Just for her to take a snapshot, and we drove back to the airport. And she said that she had books on Columbine, read all the stories on it, photos at the house. No kid. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Photos of it at her house, things like that. And she was, I don't know, low mid-20s, I think she was.
Well, Steve, real quick, it's the same thing where people are taking selfies at Auschwitz.
Yeah, exactly. It was so weird. So yeah, people, just the thing about the Titanic. Why do you want to go down there? No clue. I mean, I guess the adventure. I'm not an adventurer, so I mean, Jonathan doing cliff diving. I'll watch. I ain't doing that.
I didn't know John was Bruce Wayne splunking in his spare time.
Well, John Wick was actually an autobiography that's loosely based on Jonathan Harrington. I don't know if you knew this.
Would not doubt it for a second. Would not doubt it for 1 second. It's always the ones. It's always the ones you never assume.
You never assume it. No. It's like Bruce Wayne and Batman right there.
You've seen all the videos of the one special forces guy that looks like your local librarian, but he's responsible for more actual like deaths of commies than anybody else.
And where am I? Where am I? Oh yeah.
There's a lot of paper cuts right there.
No,
reading up on his prey.
It's funny, like, that's how he looks before he puts on his cape and everything. You didn't see
he's got the chin for it. You know, what I mean, you definitely got the chin for it. You got a nice strong jawline. I don't know. I got this all flabby here, but you ready to go, man.
There was a sermon or a lecture Father did a bunch of years ago on was it the what do you call it, the ossuaries in Europe, and how that people say that Catholics we're all just love the dead and we can't get enough of it, but it's really the secular people that sprinkle their ashes out of the ocean or in the wind and and stand like over volleyball, throw it on the volleyball court, and then jump on them afterwards or dive on them. And we treat the dead with reverence and respect and know their life and all this. And there's a park down the street from us to take the kids to. And the last couple of Saturdays, it's been slam packed with these, what do you call them? Celebrations of life thing. And it's just a weird crowd. And there's a little kumbaya, whatever. And it just kind of scratches your head. Like, here's our society and here's this society. And they do not mesh. And you talk about a pilgrimage to the Charts or wherever they're from. I'm 20 pages in reading The Cross in the Sand on the history of Florida. If they're from, just imagine you're living in Florida. I want to go down to Titanic. Man, you want to check out St. Augustine. How about the cool stuff that went there, or the Rio Camaro, the Camaro Real from Tallahassee to St. Augustine? How about that? You don't have to go to Mount Everest. I want to go to St. Anne's in Canada to check out Quebec to check out the relics and all the miraculous healings that are on the walls and all this. And
there's there's an actual approved Marian apparition in Wisconsin.
There's all kinds of things. So I want to go to Mount Everest. Kind of gets me closer to heaven. Why don't you just check out something heavenly and just get there later?
Why don't you go to confession? If you want to get closer to heaven, why don't you do that, buddy? I mean, speaking of which, I have to actually go. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Is that I guess y'all put it perfectly. People are kind of lost without the faith, and without that, it's the same thing as buying trinkets to try and fill the hole, or people who eat too much to do that, or people who pursue one thing or another. They need these accomplishments to fill what the soul really wants, and that is a closer connection with God.
I dropped off these two guys from Chicago who wanted to stay in the hotel in Elks Park, Colorado, where The Shining was. They wanted to stay in the room. And it's apparently haunted or whatever, but these guys are like, oh yeah, we're staying in there. I go, good luck, guys. I'm out of here.
Yeah, right? Like I don't get that. But
we flew all this way just to do that. So there's some weird stuff out there.
Well, it's also the fact that we're too comfortable that we can waste our time with day-to-day stuff. And instead of being like, hey, I got to feed like my family and make sure I have enough for that. It's like, I have this disposable income. So
Estes Park. Yes. Casey Royal fan. She corrected me. Estes Park. That's right.
Yep. Is that
there's a lot of elk in Estes Park. There's a ton of elk there.
Okay. I don't know anything about that, but okay. Sounds good. In that regard. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for moving things around. I know John had to run out. I think it is time. Let's wrap things up with the cry room, and let's start first with Fawaz, your saint of the week, and your members of the cry room.
Yeah, my saints of the week, if you don't mind, I like to pick two. It's going to be St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher. Who I believe, I don't know if it's probably the new right that it's their feast day. And it's just especially John Fisher, St. John Fisher, I don't think gets as much recognition as St. Thomas More, mainly because St. Thomas More gave up his life and left a family behind. That's always worth a little bit more weight than when a bishop does it, I guess. But St. John Fisher, a great reformer, I think he's one that Luther definitely feared. And we need more St. John Fisher, bishops like St. John Fisher, who understand that if you're really going to resurrect the church to its glory, you got to start in the seminaries and reform the seminaries and get good priests coming out of there, and that's how you really fight the battle. So kudos to John Fisher and St. Thomas More. Pray for us, please. And then my choir room, I didn't pick this one a few weeks back because I wanted to see how well, how bad it's going to get. But things have gotten pretty bad for Bud Light. So that's my choir room. It's gotten so bad they're no longer the number one selling beer in the country. Modelo took over. And what's funny about it is it took a month? It took 3 months for that to happen. It took them decades to get to number one, and it's a free fall because they decided to put what we call a female blackface, somebody who dresses as women but is clearly a man, who's mocking women, mocking the dignity of women, and mocking the dignity of Our Lady as their front runner, and they got what they deserve what they're getting.
Absolutely. Steve, who do you got?
It's an English day. I mean, the trad right, it's St. Alban, the proto-martyr in England. And read about his story. Before he kneels to the ground and gets his head cut off, a fountain springs up in front. And the river's parted for him on the way, and conversions happen left and right, and priests are getting martyred after him. Cool stories. Read Butler's on that. Well, I have it up. It's on Spiritus. You can read that on. If you go to censusfidelium.com, you can hear the audiobook version, which, by the way, I got the Philokalia up on there now, and it's almost in its entirety. I think I'm the only Western website that have that. My saint of the week, I'm going to go with these high school. I think they're high school kids. On Clown Plan, I was saying, hey, we need some St. Boniface out there chopping down some trees or burning some flags. I don't know.
Homophobia are unacceptable.
This type of intolerant rhetoric starts in the home.
Parents angry at town hall over intolerance at Marshall Simons Middle School. Kids were asked to wear rainbow clothes in honor of Pride Spirit Day, but some organized a counter-protest wearing red, white, and blue or black. The principal sharing a statement to families that Pride posters were ripped down, stickers ripped up. Some students chanted "USA are my pronouns," and students showing pride were intimidated.
It was an unruly disruption, in fact, that was organized ahead of time.
While some parents were upset, others say it was overblown.
Some of the kids threw the stickers on the ground, but I can only speak for my daughter. She didn't want to wear that to school. It's not that she wanted to hurt anybody's feelings.
She says her daughter felt coerced to participate in the Pride event and was offended by some of the messages, like this quote from Tennessee Williams.
Human heart cannot be straight. It is curves and winds. And my daughter just kind of said, Mom, that's offensive to me, who I am straight.
So, for those guys standing up, there's a lot of men that won't do that right now. There's in England, there was some Anglican charter school I don't know, did you guys hear about that? The kids are actually one girl wanted to say that she identified as a cat or a cow, and the two kids, Paul Joseph Watson has a video on it, corrected her, and the teacher got mad at the two kids, and the kids stood up and really tore her apart, and not in a mean way, but took all her responses and threw it back at her. And then it's gotten so out of hand there that kids are identifying as dinosaurs. Now, hopefully these kids are mocking the situation, because I think I would do that if I was there. Oh, okay, she's a cat, then I'm a T-Rex. Roar! And they're responding in roars, meows, barks, things like that. That Downey Street is literally telling people telling the schools to say, you got to pump the brakes on this. Well, while they have the flag of the infiltration sitting there in the streets. So I think it's cool that these guys make the mockery as much as you can with it, because that's the best way to show the stupidity and all it.
Well, that's just because the Pride people were stupid enough to make it mainstream.
Yeah.
As soon as it becomes mainstream, the youth is designed to rebel against it.
It's fantastic. I'm a dinosaur. Roar. What's your name? Roar. What's the teacher doing? That they said the teachers are too scared to correct them because they're afraid they might.
Well, they're real. Yeah.
Their brains, as GK said, you've gone you're so open-minded, your brains fell out.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
We'll go to the crime room with I got a 4-parter, same topic. We'll go with well, you know what happened.
Professional indulgence for their outstanding service to the LGBTQ+ community. Result is this community Sister Comedia.
Yeah, one guy.
Now they said in context of this, they said it happened an hour before first pitch, so even less people because I go to a lot. Used to go to a bunch of baseball games when we were kids, and a ton of them. We got 20 baseballs from a Reds game in Atlanta once because we saw back in the Braves days they were terrible. Not that many people in the stands. We were in Milwaukee County Stadium one time before Milwaukee went to the National League. Roger Clemens was pitching for Toronto. We went to the White Sox game because we knew the guys on the team, and we got tickets in Milwaukee, and literally there was 20 people in the stands. We sat in those yellow seats right there, but the security guards, there was nobody in those blues. Imagine that being it. And they almost John Wick you if you got in the blue. There was nobody in the stadium. So, but back in those days, you can get in for BP hours before the game. Nowadays, you can't get in before BP, and they opened it up. Here's an hour before first pitch. Nobody's in the stands. And my last point on this is Bill Blasky, I think his name is Plasky. He's a Catholic writer for the LA Times, and he mentions how there's more cops around the area than on there. But he also called it, here's the Pride Night feels like a rainbow of love as sisters are honored. Here's the third inning. So people are jacked about what happened, the boo and all that. Great. But by the third inning, they still had people in the stands. That's kind of a typical game, even though it is San Francisco, they're rivals. And they got throttled the second night. It's the worst loss in 125 years. They lost to the Pittsburgh Pirates back then. So they got crushed. Now, the funny thing, before the Pride game was Clayton Kershaw bobblehead night. And he had his family on in the field and all this. And they got swept by the Giants, who's all for gay stuff too. So let's not say, God was intervening.
Yeah,
no. San Francisco is as gay as they can come on this. And they were nominating the San Francisco group, who they didn't do nothing for LA. The LA chapter was established in 1995, which Bill gets called out because he talks about the LA chapter doing this since 1980s. No, the LA chapter didn't exist in the 80s. And but they had plenty of gate. They still sold tickets. They still went to the game. And Clayton won the fourth game, so they got swept, and Clayton won the next game. So Clayton can talk mad smack when you're not on the schedule to pitch. This is terrible. I'm not going to. Yeah, where's your protest to play? If he was scheduled for the start, would he have started? Guarantee he would start. Here's their manager.
Love everyone, and that's kind of where I'm at, man. Anyone who wants to come in here and support us and the Dodgers, I'm all in.
He got his little gay hat.
And that's how I was raised.
Pathetic. Again, here's Bill's piece on it. He basically talks about how great the nuns are. His daughter's gay, apparently. And he actually quotes, here's a Catholic priest. Who does he bring up? Father Chris Panett, who is what I'm told is a gay priest out in the LA Archdiocese, and he's in the ministry to get lesbian gay persons, and who is also, according to Justice Shambra, has tried to get third and fourth graders to be pushed into the gay lifestyle and all this stuff. So Texas Rangers are getting ridiculed for not having Pride Night. The guys in that lifestyle are upset that their lifestyle is not put on the scoreboard. What kind of life do you have to have? That you have to have what goes in your bedroom promoted for everyone to see. So they're the only team not do Pride Night. So a lot of people are getting Rangers gear because of this. So hey, go! If you get a Texas jersey,
you should. But I mean, they're all splitting from the same pot, so it's just
the shares will help out. Everything's equal in the share part.
Yeah, it's fine. All right. So for my cry room, it'll be the Senate for voting down the repeal of the pistol brace rule. It happened today. I'll talk about it in the Daily Mag Dump in about 15 minutes. They knew it was going to get vetoed, but still, that it's complete and utter cowardness and just placating to the courts and making sure the courts do their job. And then my, I don't want to call him my saint of the week, but my shout out of the week will go to Vladimir Putin, who is expected to sign a bill that forces chemical castration for all pedophiles in Russia. Say whatever you will about Putin, but that's something I can get on board with. All right, folks, that's it for the episode of News from the Pew. Please like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. I am your host, Rick Barrett. Thank you for Jonathan Arrington, Fawaz Yazzie, and Steve Cunningham. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.